So thank you for coming. I'm really excited that London Road was asked to participate as presenters for this. And so when our team talked about the things that we felt like small business owners or nonprofit organization leaders or administrators in municipalities, or anyone that is in some sort of role that they are responsible to help promote their company, we were talking about what some of your needs are, and there are so many. Gone are the days that you have a radio guy, a newspaper guy, and a TV guy, and you just need to call them up whenever you want to promote your business. That's where I started in marketing 20 some years ago. And today it has changed significantly. And so, what we thought would bring a lot of value for you in this first session is just to help you start thinking like a marketer. There are a lot of things that we will do as marketers to evaluate what the best approach will be in promoting clients, promoting events, whatever it might be. And my goal today is to try and help you think a bit more like a marketer when you're working on some of the promotions that you are doing. Some of you may have a very specific role and it's marketing. Some of you might be a business owner that is just having to have this as a side job because you're not going to have sales unless you have marketing. And some of you might be tasked with this as a side of your desk type of role. And it feels like it's the last thing you want to do. And yet it's such an important thing for you to have focus on. So that's my goal today. I'm just going to bring up a slideshow, and I'm hopeful that this is going to come up for you exactly the way I want it to. So if Haley or Pat, if by chance you can't see my screen right now, please just drop a little something out there. Otherwise, right now what I have on here is a quote that I heard at a conference I was at a number of years ago now, and it really resonated with me, and I feel like it's a very important thing to consider when you are thinking like a marketer. And it is the fact that even when you are marketing to an entire audience or customer base, you are still simply speaking to a single human at any given time. So often in our marketing roles, we can get stuck in that, well, we're trying to attract individuals that are between 13 and 25 to a music festival that we think they would really love. And so we're really thinking of this large group. But keep in mind, there is one individual there that you're trying to speak to. And there's just one of perhaps 3,000 in that case that you want to connect with. There's 3,000, but each of them are one individual. And so that's what we want to focus on today, is just each person and how you can ensure that your message resonates with them. So there's 4 things that I typically go through when I'm thinking about how to market a client. And this is what I want you to do as well as you start thinking about how you can think like a marketer. And it starts with, who are they? Who are you? So what is your company's purpose? What are you really passionate about? How can you showcase your personality? So if I give an example of, a client that we have, and there's 2 owners that they're small town boys. They grew up on a farm, and they are just characters. Whenever we have meetings with them, we're usually just busting a gut. And their target market happens to be farmers as well, or ranchers. And so farmers and ranchers like people that they can connect with. And so it's very natural for that client to connect with them. But then when we try and explain that in our marketing efforts, we have to ensure that we are writing so that it sounds like those 2 characters. They're fun. They are witty. They like to poke jabs at one another. And so that's a big part of their personality. And so who they are matters in how we market them. Who you are, what your company represents, your culture within your company. Those are things that are all extremely important when you consider how you're going to explain your company's purpose and your passion. The next thing that we like to do is identify who the ideal customer is. So, who are you trying to connect with your marketing efforts? And one of the things that I love with London Road that we'll do is we will document personas. So actually writing down who do we think we're trying to connect to, and details. It might be I'm trying to connect with a 43-year-old woman who has two teenage children. She's quite busy. She loves to be active. She's out running and enjoys spin class. Her husband works away often, and so she tries to keep everything in the household going as often a single parent. And the reason I'm trying to connect with that individual is I am a food delivery company. And so identifying some of the pain points that 43-year-old would have, and identifying where you might be able to find her. Well, she has children and she's active, so perhaps there might be a connection at different fitness facilities, or there might be a connection through different school events. So, really getting a better sense of who that ideal customer is. And often you will have more than one persona, right? Knowing where some of you guys work, I would say you all have multiple personas, but getting a better sense of who your ideal customer is will help you in the future know where you can find them. The next thing we want to consider is, what is your value proposition? So, what makes you unique? Many of us will have some sort of competition within our business. And so, we're trying to ensure that we stand out from our competition. We want individuals to know us. We want them to like us, and we want them to trust us. And so we do that by explaining how we are the best at what we do. Perhaps it's your years of experience. Perhaps it is the team that you have. And so you aren't, a one man show. Perhaps there are multiple people on your team. And so that means you can get the job done quicker. Perhaps you have buying power of some sort. There's a number of different ways that you can consider your value proposition, but it is a crucial point in determining how you're going to position yourself on with some of your marketing efforts. And then finally, we want to consider, how can we find our customers? So there are so many options out there right now for us to do this. And some of them are, I guess, what many will call free tools, but I call them perceived free tools, because nothing is ever free. There's always the time factor that we need to consider with anything. But identifying where your customer is, where you are going to be able to share your story and share your personality, and how you're going to do that to help them go through their own journey, those customers, so that they first become aware of you. Then they move into that consideration phase where they're thinking, yeah, I think I'd like to work with them. And then we get to the conversion stage where, yes, they are working with you, they're a paid customer, and now they love the experience so much that they're telling their friends, and you build that word of mouth and that loyalty and advocacy. That's the journey of marketing that we want to consider. And so when you are thinking like a marketer, those things are going to be top of mind. Who are you? Who is your ideal customer? What makes you amazing at what you do? And now, where can we find those customers? So, where can we find those customers? Well, there's a lot of different ways, and unfortunately, I only have 20 minutes, so I can't go into great detail of everything. But I'm going to tell you, one of the most powerful tools you can use right off the bat is your Google My Business and Google Search. Now, Google Search is something that you do have to pay for when it's Google Search, but it can be extremely effective. And in a few sessions, Zach with London Road is actually going to have two different presentations on Google search. And I would highly recommend it because he'll go into some details to just really help you be effective with it. But Google My Business is a free tool. So you can tell on that computer screen that it shows the London Road marketing profile. Most people today will go to Google when they are searching for something. And if they can easily find your profile on the right hand side and find a lot of information that they would require, you have just eliminated a pain point for them so that they don't have to continue to search anymore. It's one of the top search engines, Google, so you are likely to find most of your demographic there. It is amazing at helping you with local SEO. What SEO means, in case you aren't familiar with that term, is search engine optimization. So ultimately, we want someone to be looking for a marketing company and for London Road to come up as one of the top ones. And if we are using Google My Business effectively, that helps our name populate higher up in Google. So for yourselves, that's an important part to consider. Some of the ways that you can do that is in Google My Business, you actually have the ability to post in there. So you can post updates. Depending on what your business is, you might want to consider utilizing one of the pieces of content that you might have on social media and repurposing Google My Business and posting it in there. That is something that Google perceives as a very positive thing, and they reward you by helping you populate up higher. I just can't stress enough how well Google My Business can work for you. And because it truly is a free tool, it's one worth putting some effort in. The other thing that I think is so important in there is the reviews. And so you can create your own process, perhaps in your company, that you ask customers to do reviews because most of us enjoy seeing, oh, that company has a number of reviews. I'm going to go in there and see, what the experience was like. But then once those reviews are given to you, it is really important for you to respond to those reviews. And I always tell people it's like if someone comes up and gives you a compliment when you see them, if you just walked away, well, that would seem a bit rude. Think of it that way with your Google reviews or your Facebook reviews. Respond to the individual, thank them for taking the time to do that, and then you can carry on with your day. If it is a negative review, I suggest that you take a breath and perhaps even wait 24 hours before you respond because it's always better, but you still want to have some sort of response. There are ways to respond in a manner that helps reflect your culture and who you are. And ultimately, we never like to know someone is upset with our business. And so when we show that empathy in our responses, it'll earn more so that even if someone reads the negative review, they're more interested to see how did the company respond to that. So those are four key things about Google My Business that I think are crucial for you to understand as a marketer, and that will definitely help your organization in the future if you put some effort into engaging in your Google My Business profile. How to get there. If you have a Google profile as a business, which I'm sure you all do, then it's in those little 9 squares that you see at the top of Google, and you'll just click in there and it'll show you Google My Business. This is one thing that if you did require additional support on this, you can just fire off an email and it's something we can definitely help you with. But unfortunately, I don't get enough time to go into the specifics of how to manage it. I just want you to think like a marketer and know that this is an important tool for you to use. The other one that is so popular, and for most organizations, it can be valuable, is Meta Business, which is most of us know it as Facebook. Um, Facebook has changed significantly over the years, and they continue to make adjustments on their platform, which can be difficult for all of us to keep up with. But it has so many great tools for us to be able to utilize. You have the news feed, which is so common for people to be posting on there. But there's iMessenger, and now there's stories, and there's groups, and there's events, and all of them can serve a really great purpose. But what I tell individuals before they start really digging into their Facebook or making too many adjustments, such as, hearing, oh, I should have a group, and then just jumping right in, take some time to evaluate why you would do this. So it's going back to those four key points at the beginning. Who's who are you trying to attract as a customer? And how are you going to communicate who you are through these efforts and what your value proposition is? But also, how are you going to be able to sustain what you're doing within the decision you're making? So if you are adding a group, what are you going to do to bring value to the individuals that are a part of that group? And how are you going to maintain a schedule of engagement in there so that it doesn't, get built up for perhaps a week or two and then it just dies off because you feel like you've run out of content. A note about iMessenger, I think it's really important to remember that anything that we're asking for direct messages or iMessenger, it's our opportunity to build trust with individuals. We all text our friends because they're our friends, and that's how we engage with them. Well, the same can be said about iMessenger or direct messaging. When we are building up a relationship with a new individual, it's our opportunity to build that trust through those platforms. And so it is ideal to not just put, thanks, okay, or even worse, K, the way my son would respond. You want to put some effort into it the same way you would respond to a friend. Facebook has really great analytics. And so I think it's important as well for us to always be evaluating what we're doing. Because if we're not, perhaps it's not working. And if we just continue to repeat something that's not working, well, that's very similar to the definition of insanity, right? So always evaluating. You know what? I put a post out 2 weeks ago and it people really responded well to that. Well, let's evaluate why did they respond well to it and how can we continue with a similar message but maybe in a different way so that you continue to give your audience what they're looking for. And that is across all platforms. So I'm speaking specifically with this slide on Facebook, but it works for every platform you're on. Evaluate what you're doing because the last thing we want any marketer to do is post for the sake of posting. I do not want you to just post something because you feel like you have to. That little idea that pops into your head of, "Oh, I haven't posted in 3 days. I guess I need to put something up on Facebook." Well, that can actually do more harm than good because of the way the algorithm works. So being intentional and having some of those analytics of what you know your audience appreciates and doing more of that will help your social media grow. And then the last thing just to note is Facebook has some phenomenal paid advertising options, and it can be it can be relatively affordable depending on what you're doing. But the one thing I think is really important to remind all of you is just be careful how quickly you pay. Over the years, I've met some people that have said, "Oh, I put a post out and I immediately boost it with $10." Well, Facebook is so smart. And so they're watching that happen. And we've actually had some tests. We've done some tests with clients that we've determined if Facebook knows that you're going to pay, Facebook will allow you to continue to want to pay. So your organic reach may not be what it could be because you've created a habit of clicking that boost button. And so I just want to caution you from that boost button because it doesn't always work the way we would want it to. Sometimes it's better to allow the post to have an organic reach before you boost something. And then the paid ads that you can create in Meta Business, those ones are those ones can be very targeted. They will obviously, you can choose to have them shown to people that follow your page, but also individuals that do not follow your page. And some of the tips that Zach is going to provide later in the sessions, you will be able to apply some of those tips with Google search, even in how you create your Facebook ads. Again, it's really helpful to do some of your own research. We didn't have enough time to walk you through Facebook ads, but perhaps there will be another opportunity down the road to do that for you. So then there's so many other platforms out there. And when we're thinking like a marketer, we're thinking about these platforms and we're wondering, does this apply to the customer or clientele or individual that I'm trying to speak to? Is this something that I can commit time to? Is this something that I can do well? And which one should I be on? So I listed 4 other really popular social platforms, which include Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And each of them have some similarities, but I also believe they are very different. And so Twitter, it's great for news and sports and politics and but you do need to be highly engaged and it can be much more time consuming. Now, there's some great tips on how you can limit that amount of time, but it's just something to really consider that, if you're in an industry where you have a lot of news that you want to send out, Twitter could be a great way of doing that. But let's evaluate who is on Twitter and who's enjoying that platform as well before we jump in. TikTok, I just have to say their algorithm is unbelievable. And so it is one that if you have a niche market in something and you are trying to attract that perhaps, 12 up to goodness, I'd venture to say up to 45 right now, although there's many individuals over 45 on TikTok. It is a really great platform from that perspective. But definitely you require some creativity to get noticed, and it can be a bit of a time suck too. So it's a platform worth noting, and there's a lot of opportunity with it, but be prepared to have to spend some time on there. LinkedIn, that is an amazing platform especially for B2B. I find that with LinkedIn, your networking capabilities are just out of this world. And you can get a lot of organic page growth with LinkedIn that I appreciate. If you're on there, though, you also need to be prepared to have not just a page profile, but a personal profile. And always that sharing is caring approach with both LinkedIn and Facebook. You will get more from being the individual that takes the post that your page has and sharing it on your personal profile. I just recommend not doing that immediately. You might want to share it a couple days later because it gives you a little more organic growth opportunities as well by doing that. And then the last one is Instagram. I'll admit Instagram is my favorite platform. And I think it's because there's a lot of different things that I can do on it, but it also is quite simple. Visuals is what really matters on Instagram to most people. So I want to see pictures of people. I want to see just a clean feed. But then the stories are like those quick little videos that if there's something really specific that I want to talk about in my business, or maybe new inventory has come into my retail store and I want to do a quick snapshot of that. Perhaps I want to do this or that so that I can do some research for my industry. There's lots of options in the stories, and I find it's really helpful, especially for that retail, beauty, and food service industry. So those 4 platforms from a digital perspective, I think bring a lot of value. But when we're working with clients and thinking like a marketer, then we evaluate which ones do they really need to be on. Maybe they have to be on all 5. We do have a few, but most people are perhaps only on 2 or 3. And then finally, I can't forget about our traditional media because it is not dead. There is very much a place for traditional media. It just depends again on who are we trying to talk to and what are we trying to communicate. So we have newsprint, we have direct mail, we have radio and billboards. I have swag in there because it does work as a really good opportunity to build awareness and word of mouth. Um, I feel like at the end of the day, word of mouth is, as long as it's positive word of mouth, is probably the absolute best thing that any of us can have. It was the start of influencers, and it just kind of built from there. So having traditional media as part of your marketing strategies when you're thinking like a marketer is going to produce a return for you. So the things that we need to consider as marketers, and I didn't put the website as a specific, but really the most important thing you have in marketing your business today is your website. 100%. Most people, when they're doing their research on a company, will go to your website first. So we want you to be really clear in your messaging. What kind of, what is your content looking like on your website? How are you communicating your message? Do you have too many layers on your website that it's getting confusing and people land there and perhaps don't know where to go? So they leave and try and find a different company who has a website that is more clear. We have to invest our time in websites. I also think there was a time that we created websites and it was like a project that we had to do, but as soon as the website was launched, it was like, oh, thank goodness that was over. That's over. And it was, that digital brochure that we wouldn't touch again until we had to create a new website. I don't think of websites like that anymore. I think your website is something that you are always evaluating. I know with our clients, we are constantly checking their website. Is there information that needs to change? Perhaps we want to add information. Perhaps we're writing blogs so that we're continuing to share more about who we serve and what we do and who our clientele would be. But your website is your number one tool. And as a marketer, you will want to invest time in ensuring that your message is clear. The other thing that is extremely important and plays into your website is your brand. It is so important to ensure that your brand is consistent. You're using the same colors, the same fonts, your logo always appears the way it should. Those things all really matter in ensuring that you stand out and people remember you. So our very last session that we're doing, Danielle is actually going to present on Canva. And Canva is a tool that if you aren't using it, you will want to attend that session because it will definitely help you in ensuring your brand is consistent. I want you to be intentional with your marketing. So again, going back to that first slide when I showed you the things that those 4 categories that we want to consider, when we are considering all of the things that we've put some work into identifying, it is easier for us to be intentional and to avoid that post for the sake of posting or get the website up and just leave it. When we are intentional, we are more successful with our marketing efforts. I added don't try to be everything to everybody because I think sometimes as marketers, we can do that. It can be, I'm trying to tell everybody the same message and we just put it out there. But if we try and think of each individual as someone that we're trying to connect with rather than everybody we're trying to connect with, we can be more intentional with our messaging. And above all else, I want you to think like a marketer. So whether it's a side of the desk job or whether it is you own a business and this is something you have to do to market your business, but you would prefer if you got to just focus on the tasks that you have. If you just start doing something, have that little birdie in your head saying, what would Dee do? Let me think like a marketer here. How can I ensure that my message is intentional? How can I make sure that this reflects our brand correctly? Am I writing this so that it sounds like something we would say if the individual came into the store? All of those things really matter in how individuals evaluate what you do and determine whether or not they want to work with you. So I want you to think like a marketer.